diet, eating, another really important thing. I've come to find out, and again, this, I can't encourage you enough. Challenge assumptions. Don't just believe stuff, okay? Because everything that's out there is not true. A lot of it is misinformation. Here's the story of how one guy almost single-handedly killed tens of millions of people. Back in the 60s, our president in the United States, his name was Dwight Eisenhower, he had a heart attack, right? So the whole world, and especially our medical community, back in the day, having a heart attack was, it wasn't unusual, but it was a little bit of an anomaly. And so as a consequence, they pulled together a Senate subcommittee to study what do we have to do to address the heart problems and things like this. And a guy named George McGovern was the chair of this committee. And so they brought in all these doctors and all these researchers, and they're all talking about what they could do. How do you address this? And most of them said, you're moving too fast. We can't do it this fast. We've got to have time to do the research. We've got to have more time to do this. And McGovern made the famous quote. He said, well, gentlemen, unlike you researchers, we politicians don't have the luxury of time. We've got to make a decision. And so there was one doctor there who was very articulate, very bright. His name was Dr. Ansel Keys. And he stepped up and said, well, listen, here's what I suggest. This I think is going to be the best thing we can do. It's called the food pyramid. Okay, you heard of that? The food pyramid. So down to bottom, we'll have between 11 and 13 servings of carbohydrates, grains and things like that. And then next we'll have less protein. And then finally, we've got to cut the fat out, because it's the fat that's causing the heart attacks. So then we'll have to come up with all kinds of products that are low fat. You heard of low fat stuff? Well, back in the day, that was it. And finally, McGovern said, okay, we're going to go with that. That was the pyramid, the food pyramid. And so then the government stepped in, started pushing it, and then the manufacturers of food, they stepped in and started providing with low-fat this and vegan and high-carb. Well, come to find out, in Huberman, they got it exactly backwards. Exactly backwards. If you look at, because, again, my curiosity got the best of me, and I thought, because I had a heart attack, okay? When I was 59, I had a heart attack. What happened was I was training pretty hard, and usually these mountains that I could run up pretty easy, I couldn't get up very well. So I went to my doctor. I thought it was in my lungs, and I went to my doctor, who happened to be my good friend, and he said, let's check your heart. I said, it's not my heart. It's got to be my lung. My heart's fine. He said, let's just check. Well, come to find out, one of my arteries was like 90% clogged. So, unfortunately, it was right at the time when they just come out with this new miracle product called a drug-eluting stent. Okay, a drug-eluting stent, which means it's coated with a drug that keeps your blood from coagulating, blood clots. It keeps that from happening. And so I was one of the first ones to get the drug-eluting stent. And so I got it. And man, I felt great. I was like the Energizer bunny. I was ready to go. Yeah, but you also have to stay on the blood thinner. But apparently my cardiologist didn't get the memo. So after a year, he said, "Oh, Doug, you're doing great. Let's take you off the blood thinner." I said, okay. And 3 weeks later, I got a clot in the stent. Now, what happened was, apparently, instead of keeping a clot from forming, it actually enhanced clots forming. And so then they had to go in and put the old bare metal stent inside the other. So long story short is sometimes medicine, again, is, they're experimenting with us, okay? So, we've got to challenge things. So when it comes to eating, they had it backwards, they had it upside down. The healthiest diet is mostly healthy fat, and then good protein, and cut out the carbs, especially simple carbohydrates. Because what happens with simple carbohydrates, as soon as you eat it, it's immediately turned into glucose, sugar, blood sugar, in your body, and then it just sets off all kinds of reactions, and none of them that are good. And so, I mean, it sounds crazy, but if you, now, and again, I realize in a DTS situation, you don't have a lot of choice. That's not, and it's not gonna kill you for a few months, right? So just eat here what you need to eat. But when you get on your own, do a serious study, a really serious study on your own of what, because and the one thing you don't want to do is go on a diet. Okay? Don't go on a diet. Make a lifestyle change, okay? So it's not like you're just going to go this, you're going to do this. I mean, your whole lifestyle changes. So you're going to exercise, you're going to eat well, you're going to sleep well. Part of it in the eating is that then you have to make sure that what you're taking in is good for you. And I do that all the time. It's just a lifestyle now, where actually what I do is when I think, it's kind of subconscious, what I'm thinking, what am I putting into my mouth? Is this healthy, or is this poison? and I'm not with every bite, of course, but often I think, is this poison, or is this good for me? And anything that's, no, I just say not anything, but most of the stuff that you can eat that's natural is good for you, is healthy, especially greens and vegetables and all these kinds of things. So, not rocket science, but it is important if you want to maintain a sense of well-being. Now, mentally healthy. The brain is something like this. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So your brain needs to be exercised as well, constantly. And sitting on the couch playing video games is probably not the best brain exercise you're going to have. You can do that from time to time. But if you do that consistently, that's not exercising your brain. So find yourself, educate yourself. There's so much now online. Are you kidding me? I did a whole course at Harvard, okay, online. And this Dr. Michael Sandel, it is the #1 course in Harvard, and it's an ethics course, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely amazing. You can take a whole course at MIT. I did a whole course of Dr. Peterson at the University of Toronto. I think it was like 40 hours of lectures I listened to, which was amazing. I learned so much. So you guys, take that brain, okay, don't save it. You're not going to use up all your brain cells. Get out there and educate yourself. If you're not going to university, fair enough. You can still be educated. You can still be well informed. And then, of course, for me, this is the key. Read.
Yeah.
You just got to keep reading stuff. Read stuff that you find interesting but challenging. And I have to look at, I'm the old guy, right? I am old school. I still think there's something about having a book in your hand there's something, I don't know, there's something about it. You can read online and it's fine. But there's something about turning pages and underlining and circling and looking up words. And I think, this is a guess, this is not scientific, this is my guess. I think you get more out of reading that book with it. There's a text, there's the feel of it, and there's a number of levels that it touches you. Yes, Miss Astrid.
What do you do more, read books or watch
inspirational video on Instagram?
I would say read first,
Yeah,
and then watch motivational videos or these kind of things to supplement that.
yeah.
But reading is critical, you guys, and read stuff that's hard for you, challenging. Because again, it's the brain that's being challenged. You're challenging it, and so not that it's going to grow, so you have this brain this big, but it's going to keep it healthy. It's going to keep it active. It's going to keep it engaged. And so, if just read whatever you can. Also, doing games is also a really good one, especially games that challenge, like chess or puzzles.
Yes.
Or something. Yeah, there you go. So, but also, don't forget this part, art and poetry. Poetry is really important, and the reason why poetry, I think, is so important for mental health is that it requires you to think, because you read a poem, and almost, the poems are almost always metaphorical, right? And so they talk about, flowers or this or that. They're representations of something else. So that then you have to think, well, that's a representation, but what does it mean? And then you engage your brain in trying to figure these things out. And again, that's what makes your brain healthy. It keeps it active. And art is the same way. Whether you paint or draw or go to museums, go to art galleries, and that's another sensory way of engaging your brain in trying to figure stuff out. And that's what your brain is for, okay? So don't save it. And finally, on this one, learn to speak well, okay? Now, a lot of people have a natural, again, if you're high in the openness, on the ocean thing, if you're really high in openness, you're probably going to be pretty verbally active, okay? Because that's a lot of social interaction. You're usually pretty verbal. Now, some of you may want to learn how not to talk. Might want to talk. You might want to talk too much. But anyway, learn to speak well. Now, you can learn this, okay? For some of you, it'll be more of a challenge, but work on your vocabulary. Because the only way you have to communicate what you're thinking is verbally, right, or writing. But the only way to communicate and get out what you're thinking is by talking. And somebody, well, if I talk enough, maybe I'll say something important. No. You need to really think carefully about choose your words carefully. That also will keep you from lying a little bit. But it's and also it's I don't know how to say it. There's the old saying that everybody in the room will think you are the smartest person in the room until you open your mouth. Every person will think you're the smartest until you start talking. However, if you speak well and you talk well and you communicate in a good way, then that is going to give you that will make an impression. Not that you're out to impress people, but that will say, hey, that's somebody that's serious. That's somebody that I need to listen to. And so speaking well is also, because a lot of times, although my favorite quote about sharing the gospel is, I think it was Francis of Assisi says, share the gospel every day. If necessary, use words. So, share the gospel every day. If necessary, use words. In other words, demonstrate it, show it, live it. But at some point, you also need to tell it. You need to speak it. So, again, discipline yourself to be a good speaker. Speak well.